Welcome back to part 3 of our journey on the Bob Marshman project. We've spoken before about other elements that make this building quite distinct. We've spoken about the insulation, the double glazed windows, and the membrane that actually keeps the building airtight. All these things come together, as well as a few other key markers to achieve Passive House certification. One of the key markers for Passive House certification, as we've mentioned, is air tightness. And this is determined by an air tightness test. And it's the air tightness that gives us the indoor thermal comfort that everybody that works in here and trains in here and learns in here is going to enjoy. But to enjoy it, first we have to get that air tightness certified. So that is done by an internationally recognized blower door test. These tests are conducted by a company called ATSA, which is run by John Moynihan and John Barrett. The target we're going for is 0.6 air changes per hour or lower. Now, if you think about a normal dwelling, and Bob Marshman building is not much bigger than a generously proportioned house, that would be about 10 air changes per hour. And the reason why 0.6 is better than 10 is because with 0.6 we can control the air that's coming in. And by controlling the air that's coming in, we're controlling temperature, humidity, and indoor air quality. So if we're at 10, we're bringing lots of heat and humidity in, and that's what is impacting the thermal comfort for those that are using the building, and thereby they're generally looking for mechanical heating and cooling to make themselves feel more comfortable. The aim here is, of course, that we're little or no mechanical heating or cooling to enjoy the building. So my old friend John Moynihan from the blower door test company ATSA, and also from Equilateral, which is a company helping us achieve Passive House certification, is here to talk with us today. More detail about how we achieve that and the importance of it, and why doing this is really the way of the future for Queensland and Australia. It's with great pleasure that I'm here with John today. John, known you, 15 years?
Yeah, I reckon.
And it was John that gave me, I guess, the germ of the idea of thinking about a passive house building. So thanks for that, John, this crazy and courageous journey that we're on. And John has really been my guiding light for what to do with respect to passive house and air tightness and all that. So I can't think of a better person to have a discussion with than yourself around, exactly what is passive house, and let's get into some of the detail of that.
Perhaps the most important thing to think at the beginning from Passive House point of view, as opposed to other certifications that are on the market such as Green Star, is this is all about just the building. It's about the envelope of the building and everything that happens inside it. It doesn't take into consideration any of the externalities. It just looks at the performance of the building. And its basic concept is that you should be able to maintain a perfect environment, a comfortable environment within a building throughout 365 days of the year for the life of the building, without necessarily having to pump it full of conditioned air. And in other words, you're not setting it up to try and fix that it's not performing. You're setting it up to perform all the time, and therefore you don't need any fixers like massive condensers and etc. etc. The Passive House process or methodology is of German origin, and you probably all know that already, but it is a highly sophisticated approach. So it doesn't let anything to chance. It takes everything into consideration. So we take it right down to body heat, moisture off of people sweating in the room, in the building. It looks at transference of heat through frames. It looks at, of course, the ones we would be used to, which is the walls and the roof insulation. The glazing is usually pretty high spec, subject to response to the temperature outside. So it is specifically matched to a location. So there's data files of all the temperatures over 365 on an hourly basis. And that's what we use as our basis. And then we put the whole thing through an interactive tool that basically tells us whether we meet the demanding rigor that Passive House sets down. What we have here is a high density of people max probably 80 people when it's fully functioning in 600 square meters, which isn't a lot of space for that number of people. But we introduced fresh air through a mechanical ventilation heat recovery system that basically balances all the air in here. So we've a constant fresh air coming into the building. There's basically 2 loops inside the building, and the 2 loops inside the building, one loop basically takes the air and loops it through the building, and while it's doing that, it's taking out the excess moisture, but not out, it's taking it out of the air that's in here. It's not introducing extra air. And the next loop is actually controlling the temperature inside, again without any introduction of air, because the only way air is allowed to get into the building when it's in operation and when it needs to be kept at the desired 23 degrees and 55% humidity, the only way the air can come in is through those mechanical ventilation heat recovery.
So for me, the interesting thing about that is, so not only do you get the lovely temperature, but obviously over the lifetime of the building, the cost to actually keep it at that ambient temperature are going to be far less than if we were mechanically heating or cooling it. And yet there's so few of these that have been done in a commercial setting. So have you got any ideas as to why, there've been some sort of pathfinder thinkers in the residential setting, but in the commercial setting, with all the advantages of it, any kind of reasons do you think why it hasn't really taken off in an area where I thought it would really be even more suited?
Well, it's probably a number of factors. It's new to Australia. It's probably only been here 12 to 15 years. So it's new technology. We don't have enough really people educated to educate those people, right? And we don't have enough people that are committed to it around the country. It's starting to take up. People are starting to really look at it down south. And it's simply because their climate they see as more aligned with what it was set up in, which was Central German, so Central European climate. It's very much like what their climate is down there. So they saw their suitability. So we've had all these issues now with, how do we handle the humidity, etc. You don't get that in Melbourne, you don't get that in parts of South Australia, etc. So I think it will change, and the beauty of it is that for everyone like you, as a client that invests in this, and everyone like Hutchies that are building this, they're starting to say, it's actually not as hard as it looks. We now understand it. And when you look at the things that are different, the mechanical is actually simpler, right? The walls are logically bigger, and the windows are just better spec'd. And you get those right, and concrete on the ground to help you, then you're in a pretty good starting.
And I think it's just a different way of working, and it's really requiring working away from default. And the beauty of working away from default, if you're a professional or a tradie, you're doing something a little bit unique, and that's the really satisfying stuff. If you get to the end of the day and you've actually done something that's had to draw on your skill set, or even push the envelope of your skill set, so you're having to learn a bit more. So for me, I like the fact that we've had to take everyone on the journey, and you've probably learned some things along the way.
I've learned heaps. I mean, this was a complex project, and this was, I probably know so much more about how the air works in this building than I ever would have had the opportunity to look at before. We talk about our health, and we talk about the fads that we have of people going to gyms and all the things they're doing for their own health. If you think about a physical body, the heart is beating unknown to us. You're breathing and you don't realize you're breathing, right? And all that is keeping you alive and keeping you fit, right? This building is doing that in the background, right? What you don't realize is that the air in this building, when it's used, will have an F7 filter, which is a HEPA filter. There's nothing comes into this, barring unfortunately virus. But you take viruses out of it, no other dirt can get in here. There can be fires, they can PM 2.5, TM10s are all scrubbed out of it, etc. So it's a very, very clean building. It's a very quiet building because everything is solid and sealed. There's no noise getting in, so acoustically it's wonderful. And all that goes on in the background. And if you happen to be in here learning or in an administrative role, what people read back to us all the time is feedback to us is, it's just a great place to work because it just has, we don't know what it has, but it has it, and it's doing it in the background.
And here's hoping the same for this one. But loads of confidence in you, John. So.
No, it's where we're at the point now where if it's not going to work, it won't be working by now. We're in a pretty good position for it.
I hope you found that discussion with John informative. Moving forward, We're going to be talking about the mechanical design and the implementation of that design. Now that's really important because it's that design with the technology that sits behind it, primarily out of sight, that gives the wonderful thermal comfort and also the superb indoor air quality that the inhabitants of this building will enjoy for many years to come. We'll also be looking at the concept of ESG, that's environment, social and governance. And that's really talking about the broader context, if you like, the ecosystem in which Passive House sits. We're getting to the pointy end of the project, and without a doubt, it is getting more complex. But we're excited to continue to share information with you about what makes Bob Marshman Building so special.